1. Creating a simple printer share.
Today we're going to look at setting up printers and printer sharing and configuring print servers. So the first thing we're going to do is a simple share, and you can do this on a 2008 server or a workstation running Vista, Windows 7, XP, whatever. And in order to do that, I'm going to go into I'm going to go to control panel here. Let me go to printers, and I have several printers installed here, but let's say that I want to share this one on the network and make it available so other people can print to it via their connection to my computer. Then what I would do is right click and go to properties. I'm going to click on the sharing tab. I'm going to simply check share this printer, and you can call, by default it's going to be named whatever the printer object is named, but you can rename that if you want. This option here, render print jobs on client computers, I would leave that checked because that means their computer is going to take care of all the pre-processing images and things before it sends those to the printer. If you uncheck that, it's going to make it easier on their computers, but it's going to really bog your computer down, your server. So I mean, if you have lots of CPU cycles to spare and lots of memory, then fine, you can uncheck that bit. Otherwise, I'd leave that ticked because that way it puts the burden of the print job on their client, on their computer. Notice I can also choose to list it in Active Directory. And also, if I want, I can choose additional drivers. If they have a 64-bit installation, I can add those drivers so they can install it, or Itanium. Just some different options there. So I'm going to click on OK. And now my printer is shared. Notice the icon changed a little bit there. And if I go to Start and notice that in Start it appears. So here's my shared printer under Xerox Phaser 1. And I would be able to connect to that and add it to a workstation or a client, and then I'd be able to print to it.
2. Configuring printer priority. First, we need to create 2 or more printer objects that point to the same printer device and use the same driver.
Let's take a look at implementing printer priority. The idea behind printer priorities is you can create more than one printer object, and you can have those printer objects point to the same actual physical printer. And then what you'll do is you'll change the priorities on one of those printer objects and make it higher. And you'll edit the discretionary access control list and the access control and choose the users and groups on the security tab of that printer. And the ones that you add and that you give the allow print permission, then they'll be preferred and print on the higher priority list. The users that you add to the other printer with lower priority, they'll still be able to print to the printer, but their print jobs will come second to those who have been added to the one with higher priority. So let's actually look at implementing and creating these identical printer objects. I'm going to go to printers. I'm going to say add a printer. I'm going to do add a local printer, create a new printer port, and I'll just do a fictitious printer just to kind of make the point. 199.207.13, and let's do 231 will be the IP address of our printer. Okay, now I don't want to query it. And in this case, I'm going to choose Time Warp.
Let's see, I'm gonna choose here. I have a Xerox, so I'm gonna do Kyocera. And I'm gonna go here, go down to Kyocera. I'll just choose the first driver there. And let me go here, and this will be Kyocera High. And I want to share it as Kyocera High and room 8 and
entering normal space-time.
Okay, so it's shared out and it's our high priority printer. And remember, if I go to properties and look at the port, remember that it points to 231. 199.207.13, 231. Okay, and remember the driver. It was the first driver at the top. So I need to make an identical printer object. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to add a local printer. Go here, TCP IP. TCP IP device. It's going to point to the same IP address. 199.207.13, 231. And I'm going to choose Kyocera again. You need to make sure I use the exact same driver. And next. And go with that option. And I'll just call this one normal. And it's the same device, it's in the same location, and normal priority there. And I'll click finish. Okay. So Kyocera High, Kyocera Normal, the exact same driver, and they both point to the same IP address. And now I'm ready to implement, priorities on these printers.
Now, let's set different priorities on these duplicate printer objects and configure permissions.
Now that we have our printers installed, let's go ahead and set up the differentiation between their priority. So I'm going to right click and select Properties on the High Priority Printer and go to the Advanced tab. And notice I can manipulate the priority here. Now the highest value is 99. I can't go any higher than that, but that would be the highest priority. And the lowest value would be 1. That doesn't mean that I have to use 99. I mean, if I use 2 and the other one was 1, then this would still be a higher priority. So it's up to you, but that's for dealing with multiple printer objects and fine-tuning or I guess tweaking your priority there. So it's now set to a higher priority. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to go to the Security tab. Notice how everyone has the ability to print here. And I'm going to remove that, and if I click on Advanced, let me go here and here. Here are some of the basic privileges and things: read permission and print permission, that everyone would have to print to that printer just by connecting to a share. So I'm going to go ahead and remove everyone, and now it's just administrators, and I'm just going to add certain people. So let's go browse in the directory and we'll find some people that we want to add. Okay, and I have the humans group. Okay, and that consists of like Adama and Apollo and Gaius Baltar. If I wanted to filter a specific user, I could do that as well. I could go here and well, we'll make sure that Adama has permission there. Okay. And then, as he's added to the DACL, he's going to have, permission to print to this printer, whereas the average user is not. Okay, we didn't add Cylons. So I'm going to go to this printer here, the normal one, and on the Advanced tab, I'm going to leave it set to 1. All right, it's a lower priority. On the DACL, I want everyone has permission, and I could also explicitly manage permissions via groups. Let's say I was going to throw in the Cylons group, and let's say I was going to throw in Sharon and 6. I could manually do users as well, but following AGU DLP, you would prefer to decrease the access control entries and just use groups, but just to give you an example. Okay, so they have print capability or print permission.
Finally, tell your users to use the appropriate printer object for which they have permission.
So now with my printers installed pointing to the same identical IP address using the same driver and the same device, but this one having high and this one having normal priority, and having edited the DACLs and added the users and groups I want to be able to access high versus normal, all that's left to do is I would just instruct them. Let me go to my UNC path here of the server. Notice my shared printers show up, so you would instruct the users with special privileges, higher priority, to print to Kyocera High, and you would instruct the users with normal privileges or lower priority to print to Kyocera Normal. They would both have, they would both be printing to the same printer, but any jobs sent to this printer object are going to get preference. They're going to be printed with higher priority than jobs sent to this printer object.
3. Configure printer scheduling.
Another feature that we can configure if I right click and go to Properties and onto the Advanced tab is Scheduling. By default, when you share a printer, it's always available, but if I wanted to, I could specify a certain time. Say from 12 p.m. or 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. or something. But whatever the schedule you wanted to specify, and that way, if there were certain times you didn't want that printer being used, maybe you had to schedule some maintenance, you could configure a schedule.
4. Implement printer pools. First, we need to create one printer object that points to multiple printer devices that use the same driver.
Let's take a look at implementing printer pooling. And this is the opposite of what we just previously did. Previously, we were manipulating the priority, and what we did is we created multiple software printer objects but had them point to the same physical printer, such that users that printed to the high priority software printer object, their jobs would be processed sooner, and users that printed to the normal priority software printer object, their jobs would be processed after the high priority ones. But those software printer objects were pointing to the same physical, actual printer device. Well, printer pooling is just the opposite of that. We're going to create a single software printer object in Active Directory on our 2008 print server, but it's going to point to multiple physical printer devices. And what this does is it gives us some load balancing. And basically we have to simply enable printer pooling and select multiple ports. And to illustrate this, I'm just going to go to Control Panel and Printers. And once I'm in Printers, I have two physically different printers here, right? And just to show you, I'm going to right click on Properties and go to the port settings. Now the requirements for printer pooling are they have to be physically different printers, but they have to have the same driver. They really need to be the same printer. But if not the same printer, they at least need to be using the same driver for the load balancing to work right. And these are both using the same Xerox phaser driver. This is 240, alright? And then if I go down here and select the port here, this is 245. Okay, so they're physically different printers, but they're printers that are using the same driver. And so they meet our requirements for a printer pool object. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a software printer object. I'm just going to say, add a printer. And I'm going to, in this case, add a local printer. And I'm going to choose TCP/IP and next. And I'm going to go ahead and choose TCP/IP device. And 199.207.13. I believe it was 245. We'll use the IP of the second printer. And next. And in this case, I can select from among printers here. And I'm going to go down and select Xerox Phaser. And again, I want to choose the appropriate driver. And it was this one, 7400 NPS. I'm going to click on Next. And I'll go ahead and replace the current driver. And Xerox Phaser, I'll call this Xerox Phaser Wonder Twins. Wonder Twin powers activate. Shape of a printer object. Form of some toner. And long-winded on my explanation there, but multiple physical printers connected to a single software printer object. There's our printer pool. And next, and finish. So I'm going to right click on Xerox Phaser Wonder Twins, and I'm going to go to Properties. And I'm going to go over to the Ports tab, and notice here's the Enable Printer Pooling. And let's look at the port already being used, 245. Okay, and the other port that I want to use was the 241 one. And let's see, excuse me, 240. I guess it was 240. Yeah. So I want to use this one, and I want to use this one. So I'm going to enable printer pooling. And when I enable printer pooling, it'll allow me to select more than one. So I have the Wonder Twins, and I'm going to go ahead and select this one, which is 240, and this one, which is 245. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Apply. And when I do that, Now I have two physical printer devices on the same printer, and so I can load balance between them. And in sharing, if I go here, type in the host name of my server, it's just one software printer object. But that one software printer object points to two physical printers, all right, two ports.
5. Configure the print server role.
In addition to setting up a simple print server, just by sharing out a printer, there's also a print server role that you can add. So if we go to Server Manager, I'm going to go to Roles. I'm going to click on Add Roles, go down here to Server Roles, and then in this case I'm going to select Print Services. I'm going to click Next. I'm going to click Next, and notice the different features that you could add. I'm just going to go with the default print server, but if I were to go here, there's a description here: line printer daemon. If it were Unix based and you wanted Unix machines to be able to print to your printer, and internet printing as well. Of course, I'd have to install Internet Information Services. And I'm just going to go with a simple print server right now. So next and install, and installation succeeded. And I can click on close, and now print services is set up, and that adds. If I go to administrative tools now, I can access that from here. I can go to print management, and there's a tool with which I can use to manage print servers.
6. Using the print services management tool to manage multiple print servers.
Now let's look at adding different servers that are sharing printers to the print services management tool, so we can kind of centrally manage all those servers. To do that, we're going to need to make sure that if I go to Network and Sharing Center, I need to make sure that Network Discovery is turned on. Okay, and by default this is turned off, so you're going to have to go into Network and Sharing Center and make sure that that has been enabled before you use this tool to discover other print servers out there on the network. So it is turned on. I verified that. Remember, you can switch back and forth between public and private, and based on that, your settings are going to be different. Okay, so that's what has been discovered on the network. So I'm going to go ahead and open the tool, and I'm going to go to Administrative Tools, and I want to go to Print Management. And under the Print Management tool, notice here's my local print server, Pegasus. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say Add Remove Servers. I'm going to click on Browse. And when I do, here's some servers. There's Frankenstein, Galactica, Pegasus, Starbuck, and TV, which is the computer that controls my television bit. The only other one that is a print server that I'm interested in is Galactica at this point. Right? It serves out and shares another printer. So I'm going to select that server, and I'm going to go ahead and say Add to the list. And so now I have Pegasus and Galactica. I'm going to click on OK. When I do that, notice that they appear here, and then for each of them, I can choose management options and view different features about those printers. So
7. Implementing print services filters.
Let's look at creating filters so we can view different attributes, or printers that contain different attributes. So again, I'm going to go to Print Management, and this time I'm going to open Custom Filters here, and I'm going to add a new printer filter, and I'm going to call this one Test. And Test, I'm going to display the total number of printers next to the name of the printer filter. I'm going to say Next. Field, and I'm going to say printer name. And notice the conditions: begins with, starts with, contains. Okay, and then I could add other items down here if I wanted to, but I'm going to go with that one. And I could send an email notification or run a script, based on the conditions of the filter being met. Okay, and then notice I have one printer here who contains the word hi in its name. Okay, and then here's some default ones, all printers listed on my print server here on the Pegasus, and then here's all the drivers set up, all the different drivers that are being used. This can give you an idea of using the built-in filters and also creating your own custom filters in the print management tool.
8. Use the print services management tool to publish and assign printers in Active Directory through Group Policy. First, let's hop onto the domain controller Galactica and create and link two empty group policy objects.
You can also use the Print Services Management tool to publish and assign printers in Active Directory using group policy objects applied to domains and organizational units. So to do this, I'm going to open up Administrative Tools and open up Group Policy Management, and I'm on my domain controller right now, the Galactica. You'll notice here are my groups. I have Cylons, in which I have my global group Cylons, and humans, my global group humans, and then the users therein. But I'm going to go ahead and create a GPO and link it. I'll just call this Cylon Printer Policy, and I'm going to call this one Create and Link, and I'll call this Human Printer Policy. I'll put that in all caps there. Okay, so they're linked and they're there. They're not really doing much, but just to show you that you can use the Print Services Management tool, I'm going to go ahead and close out of here, leaving those two empty GPOs linked, and we'll configure them from Print Management.
Now that you have created and linked two empty group policy objects, configure them with the Print Services Management tool.
So on the Pegasus, my print server, where I have that tool installed, I'm going to open the Print Management tool, and I can go down now and I can select individual printers. So in this case, I'm accessing my print server Pegasus. And I'm going to go to printers here, and let's say that I want to assign this one to the humans, the Kyocera High. Alright, so I'm going to right click, I'm going to say Deploy with Group Policy, and then I can look for GPOs to find the GPO name, and I'm going to give that one to the humans. So humans.pirates.the7cs, there's my organizational unit, the policy that is applied there, and we're going to call it the Human Printer Policy. That's the GPO that we originally created. And once that has been selected, notice that deploy this printer connection to the following: the users that this GPO applies to, the computers that this GPO applies to. If I deploy it to the users, then any user in that organizational unit, regardless of the machine that they log on to, this printer connection will appear and be available for them, and they can print to the printer. On the other hand, if I choose the computers that this GPO applies to, then any user who logs on to that computer, regardless of who they are, will have that printer connection available to them. Alright, so these are sort of opposites here in terms of their relationship. But I'm going to say the users in this case, and I'm going to go click on OK. Alright, and then I'm going to go ahead and do another one, and the normal one here, the lower priority one, we'll give that one to the Cylons. So I'm going to right click and say Deploy with Group Policy. I'm going to go Browse, and I want to select Cylons and Cylon Printer Policy, and I'm going to say the users that this GPO applies to as opposed to the computers, depending on how you want to manage it via group policy. Okay, so now we're able to do that in this case and deploy these printer objects through group policy.